She was lying on the pavement, blood soaking through the denim of her jeans, her small body twitching as her hands clenched at nothing, air, fear, confusion. Around her stood a circle of adults, their shadows stretching over her like vultures. HOA members, neighbors, people I had smiled at, waved to, shared holiday cookies with. Now they stood with arms folded, lips tight, phones in hand, some recording, some whispering, none moving. Back up! I screamed, dropping to my knees beside her. She can't breathe. Give her space. Autumn's eyes fluttered open and shut, her lips turning pale, her walker overturned just a few feet away. She had only stopped at the edge of the clubhouse sidewalk to catch her breath, to rest her legs. That's all. But apparently that was a violation. Apparently that was enough to summon a mob. I looked up and there was Gloria Pierce, HOA president, tilting her head with that infuriating calm. This wouldn't have happened, she said coldly, if you hadn't let her wander around unsupervised. She broke the rules. Again. My heart exploded with rage. She's a child. I shouted. She needed help. But Gloria just raised a brow. She needed boundaries. And right then, as my daughter bled on the concrete, I realized something sickening. This wasn't just about sidewalks or walkers or rules. It was about control, power, fear disguised as order, and cruelty masked as neighborhood pride. They say monsters don't live in nice neighborhoods. But mine? They wore name tags, HOA badges, and they circled my child like wolves. My name is Renee Lawson. I'm a waitress at a local diner called Betty's Grill, where I work double shifts and memorize regulars' orders better than my own sleep schedule. I'm a single mom, by choice, by necessity, by strength, and everything I do, every breath I take, revolves around one person, my daughter, Autumn. Autumn is 11 years old. She was born with a rare combination of epilepsy and brittle bone disease. She's had more broken bones than birthdays and more seizures than most people can count in a lifetime. But you wouldn't know any of that by the way she smiles. She has a quiet kind of light, the kind that doesn't scream for attention but still warms the room. She walks with a lavender-colored mobility walker that's covered in hand-drawn bird stickers. She calls it Feathers. Her doctor said it was important she felt ownership over her mobility. Autumn took that to heart. She loves birds, loves watching them, drawing them, naming them. There's a robin that lands outside our kitchen window every morning. She calls it Melody. I think it senses her, like it knows this little girl is gentler than the world deserves. We moved into Oak Hill Estates last year. It was supposed to be a fresh start. The neighborhood had wide sidewalks, level driveways, and a school just 2 blocks away. I chose it because it was close to her specialists and had an emergency clinic within 3 minutes. Safety, accessibility, a sense of community. That's what the brochure promised. And for the first few weeks, it seemed perfect. People smiled. Lawn sprinklers misted like scenes from movie sets. Kids played in front yards. The HOA website used words like family-friendly, respectful living, and neighborly harmony. I told myself we'd finally found a place where Autumn could just be a kid, not a patient, not a liability, just a kid. But that harmony didn't last long. The first letter arrived 2 weeks after we moved in. It was folded neatly and tucked into our mailbox, stamped with the HOA's gold crest. Dear resident, we have noticed that a child's toy mobility assistance device has been left visible near your garage area. Please note that all yard areas must be free from visible equipment when not in active use. Kindly store such items out of sight to preserve neighborhood uniformity. They called her walker a toy. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a poorly worded policy. So I called the HOA office. That's when I first heard her voice. Gloria Pierce, HOA president, elegant, polished, always with a clipboard and a dismissive tone. Oh, yes, she said smoothly, we received a few complaints. It's nothing personal. We just try to maintain visual cohesion. I'm sure you understand. Visual cohesion. That's what she called the thing that helped my daughter move. I bit my tongue, apologized, and wheeled Feathers into the garage each night, even though Autumn cried every time I did. But What if I need it fast? She asked. What if I fall? I didn't know how to explain that sometimes keeping peace costs more than it should. Then came the warning about the ramp. We had installed a small wooden ramp, temporary and code compliant, on our front steps so Autumn wouldn't struggle coming in and out. Gloria left a note taped to our door. This structure has not been aesthetically approved by the HOA board. Please submit architectural modification paperwork within 10 days or face fines. I submitted the paperwork, paid the fine anyway. A few weeks later, Autumn started a little sunflower garden in the side yard. She'd been collecting seeds and drawing plans for months. She even made hand-painted signs with the names of each variety: Golden Smile, Firecracker, Autumn Blaze. It was her happy place. Her peace. Gloria called it unsanctioned landscaping. Apparently, children weren't allowed to plant anything in public-facing areas. So I dug up half of her garden myself. And Autumn didn't cry. She just stopped drawing for a week. Stopped laughing. Stopped talking about the birds. I told myself we could ride it out. That maybe if we just followed the rules, if we kept our heads down, the community would come around. Maybe they'd realize Autumn wasn't a threat to their picture-perfect lawns. But the letters kept coming. No chalk drawings on driveway. No more than 2 therapy appointments per week visible to neighbors. Please remind your daughter not to rest on the sidewalk. Yes, that was real. They actually complained that she sat too long on a public sidewalk because her bones ached from walking home. I should have seen it then. I should have known it would only get worse. But I was tired, and alone, and hopeful. I clung to the idea that we were just misunderstood, that if I explained ourselves enough, proved our value enough, they'd see the truth. But the truth is, some people don't want to see anything that doesn't fit inside their narrow little box. And my daughter? She was never made to fit in boxes. She was made to fly. Gloria Pierce didn't become president of the Oak Hill Estates HOA quietly. She took it like a throne. No sooner had the board announced the election results than new notices started hitting every mailbox: updated community compliance policy, revised aesthetic standards, and neighborhood conduct expectations. At first glance, it all looked innocent, just the kind of detail-obsessed bureaucracy HOAs are known for. But it didn't take long to realize who these new rules were designed to target: families with loud kids, families who rented, families who didn't decorate their mailboxes during approved holiday periods, and families like mine who brought visual disruption in the form of walkers and ramps and sunflower gardens. Gloria called it preserving the Oak Hill standard. I called it what it was: exclusion dressed in white gloves. The first rule change banned non-aesthetic medical equipment from public-facing areas. I received a violation notice 2 days later because Autumn had leaned her walker against our porch railing when we came in from rain. Another rule: no unsupervised loitering by minors near community entrances. That was code for Autumn resting outside the clubhouse for 5 minutes on her walk home. And the neighborhood changed with it. The same parents who used to wave or say hello at the bus stop suddenly became very interested in their phones. Kids who had once played hopscotch with Autumn started pulling their scooters closer when she approached. One boy even whispered, "My mom said I'm not supposed to talk to her anymore. She causes problems." Autumn heard it. She didn't say anything. But that night, she asked if we could repaint her walker. Maybe if it looked cooler, she said quietly, they'd stop thinking it's a problem. It wasn't long before Gloria started bringing a clipboard to community events. She'd walk around, documenting every violation she could find. If Autumn's sunflower drawings were chalked on the sidewalk, violation. If Autumn rested on the grass while waiting for me after school, violation. One day, I saw Gloria pointing her phone at Autumn while she fed birds at the neighborhood bench. When I confronted her, she said, "Just documenting for records. You never know what someone might try to blame the HOA for." That same week, Autumn came to me with an idea. She had spent hours drawing handmade cards, each one decorated with birds, flowers, and kind messages like "You are worthy" and "You matter." She wanted to sell them for $1 each and donate the money to a children's hospital. I cried when she told me. I helped her set up a little table on the sidewalk outside our house. Just a folding table, a jar with a sign, and a stack of cards she'd poured her heart into. She sold 4 in an hour. A jogger stopped and bought 2 more. Autumn's face lit up like the sun itself. Then Gloria showed up. She strode across the lawn in her pristine white sneakers, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched like a judge about to issue a sentence. "This isn't permitted," she said, arms folded. Autumn blinked. "It's just cards. I'm giving the money to sick kids." Gloria's tone turned icy. "Sidewalks are not for commercial activity. This is private property. Remove the setup or we'll be forced to fine your household." I stepped between them. "She's raising money for charity." Gloria smiled, but it was the kind of smile that cut like glass. "Intentions don't override regulations, Ms. Lawson. If I make an exception for her, everyone will want one." Autumn quietly gathered her cards. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. She just folded everything back into the box and whispered, "It's okay, Mommy. I can draw more. Maybe I'll just give them away." That night, she asked me what commercial activity meant. I told her it was just a phrase people used when they didn't want to say what they really meant. "We don't want you here." Autumn's teacher, Ms. Bott, was the only adult who ever tried to intervene. She called me after Autumn had come to school, unusually quiet for 3 days in a row. "She's not herself," she said gently. "She won't participate in art class." I tried asking her, but she said she didn't want to get in trouble for drawing. I explained everything: the HOA harassment, the sidewalk ban, the garden warnings. Ms. Bott was horrified. "This is unacceptable. I'll speak to the principal. Maybe we can organize a community project to show support." But before she could act, she received a formal letter from the HOA reminding all school personnel that interference in community governance by outside agents, including educators, is a breach of homeowner privacy and policy. In other words, "Stay in your lane, teacher." Ms. Bach called me again. She was shaking with anger. "They threatened to file a complaint with the district. I've never seen anything like this. I want to help, but I'm being muzzled." I didn't blame her. That's how the system works. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't hit. It isolates. And little by little, it erases people like my daughter, not with fists, but with fines, with silence, with shame. And the worst part? I still believed somewhere deep down that if I just kept playing along, if I kept smiling, kept paying the fines, kept nodding at meetings, eventually they'd see Autumn for who she was. But they didn't want to see her. They wanted to erase her. And I didn't know it yet, but the moment was coming when they would try. In broad daylight. In public. And this time, it would leave blood on the pavement. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Warm, breezy, unassuming. The kind of day you never expect to turn into a nightmare. Autumn had stayed after school 10 extra minutes to help Ms. Bott organize art supplies. She loved feeling helpful. She texted me to say she was walking home like always. 2 blocks, a straight path, a neighborhood she should have been safe in. I was prepping dinner when I got the call, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Autumn was passing by the HOA clubhouse, a stucco building with pristine hedges and neatly stacked HOA bulletins posted in glass cases, when her legs began to tremble. It wasn't new. Some days the strain of walking, even with her walker, was too much. She always knew when to stop, when to rest. She found the same low stone wall she often leaned on when the cramp started. It sat under a tree just outside the clubhouse entrance. She parked her walker beside her, took a few deep breaths, and wiped her forehead. That's when Gloria saw her. "She's loitering again," Gloria muttered, stepping out of the building. She was flanked by Terry Lowell, the HOA treasurer, and Marcia Crane, her ever-silent backup. All 3 wore their HOA pins like badges of honor. They approached her with stiff smiles and hard eyes. "Miss Lawson," Gloria said flatly, "this is an arrest stop." Autumn looked up, startled. "I'm sorry. I just need a second. My legs. You can't sit here," Gloria cut in. "You know the policy. This is HOA property." "I'm just catching my breath," Autumn said, voice small but steady. "I'll go in a minute." But Gloria wasn't interested in minutes. She was interested in control. Terry moved closer. We've warned your mother about this. You're not allowed to linger near the clubhouse without adult supervision. Marcia pulled out her phone and began filming. We've had too many incidents. Better to document. Autumn's hands began to shake. She looked to the side, toward the sidewalk, tried to push herself up, but her foot caught on a crack and her walker shifted too far ahead. She stumbled. "Stop filming me," she said, now panicked. "You're becoming aggressive," Gloria said, stepping in. "I'm not." Autumn cried, backing up. Two more HOA members emerged from the building. One moved behind her, unintentionally or intentionally blocking her escape path. Autumn was now surrounded. 7 adults. No exits. Her breathing quickened. Her lips parted. Her chest began to rise and fall in fast, shallow jolts. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't." She clutched her walker, tried to pull herself upright. Then her knees buckled. Her body went limp. She collapsed forward, her head striking the edge of the stone wall on the way down. The sound, flesh on concrete, snapped the air in two. Blood pooled quickly from a gash above her eyebrow. Her arms twitched. Her walker clattered to the ground beside her, useless. For a moment, no one moved. Then Gloria, unfazed, turned to the others. "Call security. We can't have this kind of disruption here. She needs an ambulance." Marcia gasped, but Gloria didn't flinch. "We don't know what she has. What conditions? We're not liable." And that's when I arrived. I don't remember driving there. I only remember the scream that tore from my lungs when I saw her lying there. My baby, blood trailing down her face, her body curled like a bird with a broken wing. "Move!" I shouted. I shoved through the circle of frozen faces and dropped my knees. "Autumn! Autumn!" Her eyes fluttered, unfocused. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. "She's having a seizure. She hit her head. She's bleeding. Please send someone." Gloria finally spoke, voice low, flat, judgmental. "You shouldn't have let her wander unsupervised. This isn't a playground." I turned slowly, shaking. "You surrounded her," I said. "You blocked her in like an animal. She begged you to stop." Gloria shrugged. She refused to leave. She was warned. She was resting. I screamed. She was trying to breathe. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. 7 minutes where I held my daughter's bleeding head in my lap while neighbors stood nearby, filming, watching, whispering. 7 minutes where no one, not one of them, offered a towel, a word of comfort, anything. Officer Jonah Ellis came with the paramedics. He was the first person who looked me in the eyes and said, "We'll take care of her now." I rode in the ambulance. I held her hand. I prayed. I didn't know if she would wake up. I didn't know how much blood she'd lost. All I knew was that the people I had once called neighbors had treated my child like a trespasser on her own street. And when she collapsed, they acted like it was her fault. And I knew something else. This wasn't going away. Not this time. Because Autumn didn't just collapse. She was pushed by fear, by pressure, by adults who cared more about rules than a little girl's life. And I was going to make the world see it. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Autumn lay still, her tiny body dwarfed by the white sheets and towering monitors that beeped in quiet rhythm. A thick bandage wrapped around her forehead, stained faintly red at the edges. Her face was pale, swollen along one cheek, her bottom lip split from the fall, and 4 snaked into her arm, pumping fluids while she slept. Her breathing was shallow, unsteady. The doctor told me she had a concussion, bruised ribs, and signs of a seizure triggered by extreme emotional stress. Her system had gone into shutdown from panic and trauma. It was the worst flare-up she'd had in over 2 years. I nodded through his explanation, clutching the side of the bed, like it was the only thing keeping me from drowning. "She needs rest," the nurse said softly, "and peace. Her body can heal, but what happened that's going to take longer?" I sat there for hours, watching her breathe, remembering the sound of her skull hitting stone. The next morning, I checked my phone. It was blowing up with texts from Ms. Bott, 2 from Officer Ellis checking on Autumn, and a few missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them, but then I saw the HOA post. It was on the Oak Hill Estate's private Facebook group, signed by Gloria Pierce and approved by the board. It read, "We are aware of the unfortunate incident involving a minor on HOA premises. While the HOA deeply values the safety of all residents, we must clarify that the child involved was present during a non-approved pedestrian presence and had not been granted access to HOA property for resting or recreation. Our board has made repeated attempts to enforce safety regulations. We hope the child receives a swift recovery and urge all residents to follow community procedures to prevent further incidents." They called her presence non-approved. They called her attempt to breathe a violation. No apology, no accountability, no mention of the adults who stood over her as she collapsed. Just spin, just blame. And just like that, the narrative began to shift. Neighbors who had once waved from porches now looked away when I drove down the street. The mom who used to sell cookies for the school fundraiser posted a passive-aggressive comment. "We all want to protect our kids, but some parents need to take more responsibility. The HOA isn't a babysitter." Responsibility? My daughter had done nothing wrong. But it didn't matter. Gloria had poisoned the well. By Friday, an emergency HOA meeting had been scheduled, closed to non-board members. The agenda? Discussion of the Lawson incident. When I demanded access, I was told it was a confidential liability review. Later, someone leaked the minutes. They had labeled Autumn's collapse as a safety disruption caused by unauthorized usage of HOA space and warned members to remain cautious around residents with known behavioral or medical irregularities. Behavioral irregularities. They were talking about an 11-year-old girl who walked home from school and stopped to rest. That night, Autumn woke for the first time in nearly 36 hours. She looked up at me with those tired, glassy eyes and asked, "Mom, am I just a problem to them?" I broke. I collapsed onto her bed and cried into her shoulder while she patted my back with a trembling hand. "They act like I make everything worse," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." "You don't make anything worse," I choked out. "They do. You are the best part of this neighborhood." "But they hate me," she said simply. I saw it in their eyes. I didn't know how to tell her she was right, because sometimes even kids can see the truth adults try to bury under fake smiles and HOA bylaws. Later that night, I called Officer Ellis. I told him everything. He had already filed an incident report, but said the case was tricky. "There's no footage on city cameras," he said. "HOA says there was no aggression. It's being treated as an accident. Unless someone from the board admits otherwise," he trailed off. "So they just walk away?" I asked. His silence was answer enough. I hung up and stared at my daughter's sunflower drawing taped on the wall, and I made a decision. If the system wanted to ignore what happened, then I'd make sure the world didn't, because my daughter didn't bleed on that sidewalk, so the HOA could call it a disruption. She collapsed under the weight of adults who valued compliance more than compassion, and I was going to make sure no one forgot it. The truth has a way of crawling out, even from behind closed doors and HOA silence. 3 days after Autumn was released from the hospital, we returned home to find a package on the doorstep. No return label, no signature, just a small cardboard box with a flash drive taped to the top and a sticky note that read, "This needs to be seen. A neighbor who still has a soul." I brought it inside, plugged it into my laptop, and hit play. The footage was grainy, recorded from a doorbell camera facing the street outside the HOA clubhouse, but it showed everything. The cluster of adults, Gloria pointing at Autumn, the crowd tightening, her backing up, her panic, and then her fall. There was no audio, but none was needed. You could see it, the slow collapse, the walker tipping, the blood pooling under her head, the adults just standing there. My stomach twisted. I called Officer Ellis immediately. He came by that night quiet and grim. After watching the clip, he leaned back, rubbing his face. "This changes things," he said. This is not what they described in their statement." He told me, off the record, that he'd been trying to push for more internal investigation, but without visual evidence or witness cooperation, his hands were tied. Until now, he offered to bring it to the city attorney's office, but I had a different idea. The next morning, I sent the video to a local news reporter named Sasha Lynn. She'd covered stories about disability rights before and had messaged me on Facebook days earlier, offering to talk. I wasn't ready then, but I was now. Sasha watched the clip in silence. When it ended, her voice shook. This is community-sanctioned trauma, she whispered. You want me to run this? I nodded. Run it. The story aired the next day on the 6 p.m. news. Caught on camera. HOA members stand over disabled girl as she collapses. The video ran alongside my voice, calm but firm, recorded from my kitchen table. My daughter was surrounded, intimidated, and left on the pavement by people who claimed to protect this neighborhood. She bled while they filmed her. And now they're calling her the problem. It took 3 hours for the video to hit 100,000 views online. By midnight, it had crossed 1 million. By morning, it had been shared by 5 major disability advocacy pages, 2 local politicians, and hundreds of outraged strangers across the country. The hashtag began as a whisper. Hashtag Justice for Autumn by lunch. It was trending. People began posting videos of themselves standing alone on sidewalks, holding signs that said, "Would you have stood there too? Autumn deserves better. HOA doesn't mean hurt our angels." My inbox exploded. Parents of disabled children sent stories. Nurses sent prayers. Artists drew portraits of Autumn in her walker, surrounded by birds and sunflowers. Someone even made a digital petition to remove Gloria Pierce as HOA president. It gained over 10,000 signatures in 24 hours. Autumn watched it all with wide eyes. She still hadn't spoken much since the incident, but that afternoon she turned to me and said, "Mom, they're sitting with me now." It took me a moment to understand. She meant the people posting videos, the strangers speaking up, the ones who refused to let her sit on that pavement alone anymore. Later that day, Ms. Bott called. Her voice broke before she even said hello. "I saw the video," she said. I didn't know it was that bad. They told us she tripped, that she panicked, that it was minor." "It wasn't," I said softly. "I want to do something," she said. "They already warned me once, but I don't care anymore. This is bigger than policies." That weekend, Ms. Bott gave an interview of her own. Standing outside the school with tears in her eyes, she looked straight into the camera and said, "Autumn just wanted to rest, to feel like she belonged. She didn't ask for pity. She didn't ask for special treatment. She just wanted to be seen. And they punished her for existing." That clip alone was viewed over 4 million times. A national disability rights organization called Freedom to Move reached out and offered to fly Autumn to their upcoming Youth Courage Summit. They wanted to give her the Rising Voice Award, a national honor reserved for young people who inspire systemic change. I asked Autumn if she wanted to go. She nodded, a faint smile pulling at the corner of her lips. "Can I bring feathers?" Her walker. Her feathers. The same one they tried to make her hide. "You can bring anything you want, baby," I whispered. "You earned it." And just like that, the tides had turned. The world was no longer looking away. They were watching. They were listening. And they were angry. They gathered outside the Oak Hill Estates clubhouse at 10 a.m. sharp. Over 100 people. Not just neighbors. Not just residents. Strangers. Allies. Teachers. Families with wheelchairs and walkers and sunflower pins pinned to their jackets. Students holding signs that read, "Autumn is our standard. Silence is complicity. She deserved better." News vans lined the curb. Microphones. Cameras. A hum of righteous electricity in the air. No one came to be quiet. They came to be seen for Autumn and for every child who had been pushed to the margins of their own communities. The HOA board had no choice but to respond. They called an emergency public meeting that afternoon, open to residents, media, and select witnesses. The clubhouse had never been that full. Gloria Pierce sat at the far end of the boardroom table, flanked by her ever-loyal Marcia Crane and the increasingly nervous Terry Lowell. She wore her signature red blazer and her pearls like she was dressing for control. But her eyes darted. Her smile faltered. She was cracking, and she knew it. I stood up when my name was called. People say they're not public speakers until they're forced to be, until someone hurts their child. Then something ancient rises from the gut, something louder than fear. I walked to the microphone and faced the room, my palms steady, my voice sharp. I'm not here today just as a mother. I began. I'm here as a witness to what happens when power goes unchecked, when rules matter more than people, when the image of a neighborhood matters more than the lives inside it. All eyes were on me now. I turned and looked straight at Gloria. You think you maintain standards? My daughter sets them. Through pain, through fear, through love. You wear a name tag. She wears scars. You enforce silence. She inspires voices. And that, Miss Pierce, is the difference between authority and humanity. A ripple of gasps and nods passed through the room. I wasn't finished. You surrounded a child like she was a threat. You ignored her medical condition. You filmed her collapse like it was evidence instead of emergency. You let her bleed while you debated blame, and then you tried to bury it. I held up a copy of the petition, now signed by over 30,000 people demanding Gloria's resignation. But we dug it up. I stepped aside to thunderous applause. Then Officer Jonah Ellis stood, reading the findings of the city's internal review. He confirmed the HOA had been negligent, had failed to intervene, and had allowed community policies to weaponize discrimination under the guise of aesthetic order. A formal investigation into harassment, endangerment, and civil rights violations had been launched. The board voted. The result was unanimous. Gloria Pierce was officially removed as president of the Oak Hill Estates HOA. She stood only once to gather her papers, but no one offered her help. No one looked her in the eye. She left through the side door. She never came back. 2 months later, Autumn returned to school. Not quietly, not like before. She rolled in with her walker newly repainted by her classmates, bright yellow with white wings and sunflowers across the sides. A golden nameplate on the front read, Feathers 2.0 built for bravery. The school held an assembly, not for grades, not for awards, for her. Ms. Bott stood at the podium with tears in her eyes as she introduced Autumn. Sometimes courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it sits quietly. It stumbles. It bleeds. But it rises, and today we rise with Autumn. The room exploded with applause as Autumn wheeled to the stage. She didn't say much, just one sentence, spoken into the microphone with the softness of a whisper and the strength of a mountain. I forgive them, but I won't disappear for them. The mayor sent a letter. The state's Disability Rights Coalition awarded Autumn a plaque that read, For unwavering courage in the face of public injustice. And then came the one that made us both cry. A letter from the governor's office, sealed in navy and gold, hand-delivered by a state representative. Autumn Lawson, you have taught us more about community compassion and character than 100 laws ever could. Please accept the Civic Courage Award, our state's highest recognition for youth bravery and integrity. Autumn opened the box slowly. Inside was a medal on a blue ribbon. She stared at it for a long time. Then she looked at me. Do I have to wear it? She asked. I smiled. Only if you want to. She grinned. I think I want to hang it on feathers. Of course she did. That evening, we planted a new sunflower patch together. This time, it was in the community park. No one complained. In fact, neighbors helped us water it. One even offered to build a bench beside it. Autumn sketched the design. Wide, low, with room for a walker and a wheelchair. She called it the Growing Place. It now bears a plaque that reads, In honor of Autumn Lawson, who taught us all to make room where there was none. Autumn's sunflower garden now blooms in the very place they once tried to push her away from. It sits in the center of Oak Hill Park, visible from every direction. Rows of tall, golden stalks dancing in the breeze, ringed by a small wooden fence painted sky blue. Kids ride scooters around it. Parents read books nearby. Birds perch on the taller stems and sing in the mornings. Autumn named each section after people who helped her heal. Ms. Bott, Officer Ellis, Melody the Robin. Even Feathers has a signpost there, hand-painted in swirls of yellow and white. It's more than a garden. It's a promise, one the whole neighborhood now respects. Because after everything, after the collapse, the silence, the rage, the fight, change finally came. Not just in policy, but in hearts. The Oak Hill Estates HOA voted to install permanent inclusion signage across the neighborhood. At the park entrance, the community pool, even the mailbox pavilion. Bright, welcoming signs that read, "Everyone belongs here. Access is dignity. No more invisible neighbors." They repainted public benches with affirming messages and carved out new pathways wide enough for chairs, walkers, and wheelchairs alike. Autumn noticed it all, but she never bragged. She just kept showing up with quiet grace and that stubborn little smile. She began volunteering at a nearby community center for disabled youth, teaching kids how to draw birds, how to plant sunflowers, how to find peace in the middle of chaos. She told one boy who struggled with a walker just like hers, "If they don't make space for you, that just means you're leading the way." He looked at her like she was magic, because to him she was. As for me, I started something I never thought I would, a grassroots group called Mothers Against HOA Abuse. What began as a Facebook post exploded into a national support network, women, and a few dads too, sharing stories of how their children were fined, banned, excluded, or silenced by the very neighborhoods they were supposed to thrive in. We meet every month now, virtually and in person. And we don't whisper anymore. We document. We fight. We protect. Because if Autumn taught us anything, it's that being quiet doesn't keep you safe. It just makes it easier for people like Gloria to win. I look at my daughter now, walking stronger, speaking louder, still painting bird stickers on everything she owns, and I don't see the girl who is surrounded and made to bleed on the pavement. I see the girl who grew through it. Because when the world closed in around her, she didn't shrink. She bloomed. She broke through concrete, through policy, through silence, and made room not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. And me? I stopped waiting for someone else to fix it. Because they tried to bury my child in rules, in shame, in fences made of fake politeness and fear. But my daughter? She grew anyway. If this story shook something inside, you don't let it fade when the video ends. Because Autumn's story is not just hers. It belongs to every child who's ever been surrounded by judgment instead of protection. To every parent who's been told they're too emotional for demanding basic respect. To every neighbor who stayed silent, then realized too late that silence is a choice. Gloria Pierce and her HOA thought they could circle a little girl and walk away untouched. But what they didn't count on was you. Speech Balloon, have you ever seen someone pushed out of a space they belonged in because of a disability, a difference, or just because they were inconvenient? Tell us in the comments. Share your truth. Let this be a place where people are heard. Repeat button share this video with someone who needs to see what happens when we stop being quiet and start showing up. Red heart, like, comment, and subscribe, because we're telling the stories no one else wants to. The ones that matter. The ones that change things. Because Autumn didn't need to shout. She just stood her ground, and the world moved. Let's move with her. Let's never let another child bleed in silence again. Justice starts at the sidewalk, and it grows, just like her sunflowers, one voice at a time.